welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad and the ugly.
Hi everyone, I'm Carl Busby, your host of Game Set Matchup, the partnerships podcast. And on today's episode, we caught up with Conor Gilsenan, who is the sales team lead at a company called FIS. So FIS are an absolutely huge organization who are in the world of payments, banking and investing and have more than 25,000 clients and more than 1 million merchant locations in over 130 countries. Conor is a retired professional rugby player and also made an appearance on a small BBC TV show you might have heard of called The Apprentice. So Conor talks about his transition from professional sport into the world of finance and partnerships and how he's handled that sort of shifting over. He gives us some great insight into some of the learnings he took from rugby and then taking those behaviours and cultures over into the corporate world to help himself and his team succeed. We touch on some of the tips he would give his younger self, also what he feels the future holds for partnerships teams and how they will network. As always, if you want to find out more about what we do here at Finder and how we are helping businesses meet and connect with decision makers 9 times more effectively than any other platform, follow the links in the description and enjoy this week's episode. Welcome to Game Set Matchup. So this is the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. Maybe you're new to the partnerships world, you're looking for a bit of advice on how to get started, or could be an experienced pro, just looking for a bit of inspiration, a bit of direction, whichever one it is. We thank you for tuning in as always. So today I'm your host, Carl Busby. So please welcome our guest today. It's Conor Gilsenan. He's a sales team lead from a company called FIS. Hello, welcome, Conor.
Thanks for having me, Carl. Yeah, really excited to have a chat and pass on any knowledge that I can. My first job out of rugby, I was working with another startup called Detect It, and we were doing a bit of business with Finder at the time, so I got to know Greg and Jenny, and
that's nice.
Yeah, it looks like it's a company on the up. It's a great idea. People are always looking for platforms to build relationships on, and that's kind of exactly what you're doing in the business world, right? No, absolutely, spot on. We just like to start off, just give just a little bit of introduction, to yourself. Just maybe just a bit about your background. Obviously, you just mentioned a little bit there about the rugby. We could get into talking about that as well. But just a bit about your current role, and then just just what does FIS? What do they actually do? Yeah, sure thing. So I moved over to London 9 years ago now, originally to play rugby with a team called London Irish, and done that professionally for kind of 10 years. 4 years in Ireland, 6 years in London.
Oh, that's incredible.
And kept very busy while I was playing. So I studied, done a couple of degrees, one in Dublin, one in Northumbria University over here in the UK. And then once I finished my degree, I actually went into a really, really early stage startup. So it was effectively me and one of my buddies who left his job in Goldman Sachs to set up an app. Wow. And my formal title on LinkedIn for that was head of partnerships, even though it was a 2-man team. So my journey in partnerships started quite early.
Nice.
And the thinking behind that was that I was effectively just a sales rep at BDR on my days off from rugby, trying to generate leads for this startup. But we felt that if I adopted the name partnerships, people would be more open to having a conversation with me than if I was sales, right? And that's probably something you see quite a lot, right? So finished up at rugby in 2020 or 21, and then from there I kind of took a bit of time out, then started working with Detect It for a year, which was fantastic. Great learning curve for me, very dynamic startup. Took a lot from that experience, and then I took a bit of time out, went on TV for a little while. That was very short-lived, and then found myself in a blue chip company like FIS. So done quite a bit in the last kind of 10 years, but definitely enjoying the transition into the real world. And it's FIS is a great place to work. I think on paper, it's the largest provider of financial software in the world. So originally started out in providing banking software. So 90% of the world's, or 9 out of the top 10 world banks are built on FIS infrastructure. So that's where we started out. Then in 2011, we acquired an organization called SunGuard. So SunGuard were market leaders in corporate fintech, so providing treasury solutions, accounts receivable, accounts payable, so anything when it comes to finance transformation for enterprise companies. And then more recently in 2019, they acquired WorldPay. Right. So we're kind of split into three divisions. We've got our merchant services, which is WorldPay, our banking division, and our corporate division. It's a great company. I think about 70 or 80,000 employees. Great place to learn, and very sales and partnership orientated, which is exactly why I guess I enjoy it. I definitely feel valued in the organization, which is very important.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Obviously, there's a ton we could unpack and go into there, but so just obviously saying there with the rugby career, I think you obviously mentioned a little bit on TV. You was very, you kept quite obviously. You were on The Apprentice, wasn't just an old random TV show. That's incredible. But it's funny. You just touched on, you said about obviously with the startup and obviously calling yourself like partnerships. I mean, we have these conversations all the time. A lot of partnership teams do come obviously out of sales because ultimately that's kind of what you're doing. But it's just that, there is that little slight difference in terms of, with a lot of businesses, you're just trying to find synergies where you can, when you say partner, you're both obviously trying to get something out of it, right? It's going both ways rather than just, the one-way traffic, basically. Moving on to, we'll obviously keep the theme of partnership. So what would you say, like for FIS, what would you class as like being, if there was such thing as a gold star partnership, how would that look and sort of work for FIS?
Yeah, so I think you touched on it there, that the key thing for any partnership is that it's mutually beneficial, right? So you both maybe let's say take FIS, for example, we may have a gap in one of our product offerings that we need in order to meet the full needs of our clients. In that instance, we quite regularly go out to market and look for partners that, are not conflicting in terms of what we're trying to offer our clients, more complementary, and we bring them into the fray. And that's something that FIS or for a lot of technology companies do on a regular basis, because the ultimate goal is to satisfy the needs of your clients. And once you have a happy client, creates positive relationships. They spend more money with you because you're giving them value, and then they become a positive referral for the organization. So, if that's typically what we see in the world of fintech in terms of how partnerships work. We also do partnerships where it might be not necessarily complementing our service, but a channel partner, right? So someone who has a list of clients that it might be a consultant, for example, who have a list of clients, but they don't offer software firsthand, but they know that they're offering advice to these clients on how to improve their process, their people, their technology. It makes sense for them to be able to offer our software to them. It's a win for FIS because we're able to have more people using our software, and then from the consultant's perspective, they're able to, they're a one-stop shop for their clients. So they don't have to deal with multiple vendors, multiple relationships. And that's ultimately what people want, right? They don't want tons of vendors because tons of different, it's just good to have a lot of different relationships and connections. But the more you can streamline things, the better it is. And that's where partnerships come in. To me, that's really where partnerships come in very valuable. When, if I'm the trusted point of contact with a client and I'm their go-to person, they trust me to go and vet whoever else I'm bringing into the fray. And that's the beauty of working with a company like FIS. They're a Fortune 500 company, have been around for a very long time, are a trusted fintech partner. So when a client puts their trust in us, they trust that we'll vet the vendors that we're introducing to them. And we do that. We would never... anyone that we go into a formal partnership with will always go through a pretty rigorous due diligence process to become a verified FIS partner, and then our clients benefit from that because they know they're dealing with another trusted vendor. Yeah,
no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think trust, like anything in life, is obviously a big thing. Like I said, if you can build that up, so you just mentioned there, obviously in terms of the referrals, that kind of stuff will flow, because obviously they know what they're obviously going to be getting. Just obviously keeping on that, I mean, obviously kind of already partly obviously answered the question there. Obviously at Finder, obviously we're here about, or we're trying to help businesses get together, get that first discovery call, talking to a decision maker, which is quite a tough thing to do out there. Again, it's just obviously everyone on the platform is kind of open to having that conversation. So just for you, like, how have you found, like, in terms of actually going about finding new partners or vendors to talk to, like, you said, obviously you mentioned about obviously there's the referrals, but is there any other way or any kind of like things that you're doing to reach out to these new people to be able to even get that conversation happening first?
Yeah, so there's no silver bullet for being able to create new connections, right? And I think there's a multi-pronged approach is always a good thing. Like, as a salesperson, what's that saying? Your network is your net worth, and it is so true, right? Your ability to open doors is your secret sauce as a salesperson, in my opinion. There are obviously a number of other facets. I'm toggling between partnerships and sales because I think they're very closely linked, because ultimately a successful sale or a sale becomes a successful partnership. But there are a number of different facets that come into it. Opening doors is the first part of it, which is where Finder really comes in valuable, because that's a lot of people find that the hardest part, and then you nurture the relationship, and then you kind of run into project management mode when you get to the final stages of trying to finalize that partnership.
Yeah.
But what my approach to it would be, we spend a lot of money on marketing every year, FIS. So we go to a lot of events so that we get brand recognition. And when you go there, it's very important that you show up and put the best version of yourself forward. So that's coming with a plan of the people you'd like to speak to. You've got a good brand presence at the stand, and the people that show up are a good representation of your organization. So you come up, you're not passing on any of your problems to prospective partners. You're coming there in a good mood. You're there to chat. You're there to socialize. Tell them a bit about what you do, and then also listen to what they're after, right? Because that's the key bit. Because you could walk around all day telling everyone how great you are and how great FIS is, and you walk away from it, you don't know anything about anyone else. Yeah. So the key thing is that ability to give a little sprinkle about what you're about, what you're about, and then open the door to listen to what other people have to say and what their challenges are, what their goals are, and then ultimately, if you can be aligned on those, then you look to follow up on that. And that's also very key. I think you could go to hundreds of these events everywhere. Probably to be exactly, you could go to 10, 15 events a year. If your follow up from those events is poor, you're not going to get any return on them. It has to. That's the tough part, right? You can go. It's really nice if you're a sociable person to go to these events and have a few drinks and mingle and rub shoulders with all these people, but you got to follow up diligently and try and formalize those partnerships and those connections afterwards. Like for an event, what else do we do? There's a lot of there's a huge partnership ecosystem in FIS already. So having that inquisitive mind to get in there and to understand what the team partnerships exist, and to see if you can leverage them to kind of help your clients. So that's, there's a bit of work that goes into that, trying to understand what already exists there. And then just the usual stuff, emails, phone calls, the world that we live in, getting in touch with people, again, trying to have a good open conversation about what their goals are, what their challenges are, and see if you can help bridge those gaps.
Yeah, no, it makes a really good point. So I think, like you just said, the key one there, like with the network events, obviously, we go to obviously go to events and stuff as well. It's a really good way of meeting people, having those conversations. But as you said, it's the key thing is, I think you mentioned is listening as well. The listening, what about them rather than just selling yourself. And then, like you said, then obviously it's the follow-ups afterwards, to try and obviously, make sure that you try and get something out of that. So, yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Obviously, I've been to a few myself.
And it can be hard, right? Because you go to these things, and if, let's say, for example, more often than not, the people you're speaking to don't know anything about who you are, what you do, and you're trying to leave an impression and whatnot. And it's the easiest trap to fall into is just talk about what you do. The real skill is being able to give them a little snippet about what you do. They understand what you do, and then let them take the floor. That's the gold. You see so many people that show up and throw up at let's say delegates, for example. We go to these events trying to build organic relationships with decision makers and finance decision makers in these organizations, and you hear salespeople all the time. They're just there ranting about what they do, hoping that these people are taking it all in, and the reality is they're getting that 50 times in one day. So the key is trying to leave a good first impression, and then be diligent with the follow up, and that's where you'll really understand if there's merit in that relationship or not.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, 100%. Just with the next one. So obviously, again, it sounds like you've obviously got good, a lot of experience, obviously in this field. I mean, obviously, this question is kind of open to a lot of the things that you've done. But what sort of advice we might give to your younger self, sort of starting out, sort of like in the sort of partnerships space. Obviously, you mentioned that you helped your friend, I think, said in that a very, very early sort of startup. And that was like maybe I think it was your first foot sort of dipping into that world. So yeah, like kind of any sort of like tips you give to people you could talk to your younger self.
Tips for my younger self. One thing that I've always kind of had, and it's starting to wane a little bit on me, or fade a little bit, given that I'm in a big corporate animal now, and the processes are so mature and bedded out. But I've always had a really curious mind. Like, I've always been really interested in what other people are doing, be it from a social perspective, from a career perspective. Always had a real appetite learning what new kind of technologies are out there, and I think that's a really, really good thing for a partnerships person, to always
curious about
have a curious mind, be interested and engaged with people, and then that ability to join the dots. That's what I think what really sets top apart, is that they can come into a situation, understand what the gaps are, what their challenges are, what their goals are, pull back, kind of reach into their network, and then bring these two people together, or bring those two things together. I think that's the key. What advice I give myself? Well, I've veered away from partnerships a little bit now, and I'm gone into the cold face of a sales operation. So I'm dealing with big targets, and of quite a linear path, whereas I think partnerships is a little bit more it's a bit more of a bending road than where sales is very direct. So yeah, I'm not sure if I can give any advice to my younger self. I've made tons of mistakes, but from my perspective, if I was telling myself, keep that skill about you, and keep trying to grow it, and then you got to get out there, and never. I probably would urge myself to just get out and do more things, and meet more people, and never say no to any events, particularly at a younger age.
No. Well, I still think, like I said, I think still sometimes a bit of a tough one. Like I say, we've all made mistakes going through our career and that kind of stuff. But like I said, I think just being quite curious is a really just sort of good tool, especially in this day and age, all the different technologies and stuff that's going on. You just never know what path it could lead you down. Having spoken to someone, or you obviously doing research on particular things. So I think that's still again probably a very, very valuable trait to have.
Yeah. And I think as well on that, was always very fortunate to have a few like sounding boards or mentors that were maybe a few years older than me that I looked up to and respected.
Yep.
And any time I was at a crossroads or at a bit of an impasse with a decision, I always felt like I had good people who had my best interest at heart kind of guiding me along. So anyone kind of starting out in their career, try and find people like that, that are really invested in you, that you've got a very organic connection relationship with, have maybe made a few of the mistakes that can help you maybe make those mistakes. But even like to take The Apprentice, for example, like that was a really, really, really tough decision whether to do that, because just there's a ton of risks that come with it, right? And put your career on pause while you go and do it. But I'm glad I did it. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but I'm glad I did it. I took that risk. I made new connections from it. It gave me a brand new life experience and a perspective. And that was because I had loads of people who, they weren't taking the risk, but I trusted them. They were like, this is the right thing for you to do. And I felt like I wanted to, but I needed someone to push me. So having those people out there in your career is really important, because you can't do it by yourself. That's the end. That's the bottom line.
No, I like that. I think that's really, I myself my experience that as well in my previous roles and stuff, having mentors, someone that you do trust, look up to, that you can obviously try and follow, and like I said, the values and stuff that they got kind of like get passed down, and then you kind of obviously do the same. So I really like that. Just moving on to sort of working in teams. Obviously this company that you work in is obviously humongous, so you've probably got a lot of teams that you interact with like on a daily basis and stuff like that. But do you have any sort of like tips, whether this could be previously like maybe you managed a team yourself, or maybe just being involved in a specific team when it comes to having that good culture within a business, just like I said, that sort of winning mentality. I mean, again, obviously, I know you said you've kind of moved more into the sales side now. So I guess, like I said, there's obviously some things that you as a team that you do, which you sort of help you to sort of drive, because ultimately, you want people in the business that are happy, driven, passionate, to be able to hit targets and stuff like that. So any sort of tips or specific things, techniques or stuff that you do to sort of in that space?
Yeah, so coming from a rugby background, you definitely learn a lot in terms of what a high performing team looks like, what drives a positive winning culture, and what inhibits that culture. I was at London Irish for 6 years. We got relegated twice. Really, really tough. Ultimately, more so than anything, I think sport, it's very clear whether what you're doing is working or it's not. It's pretty brutal in that sense.
By the league.
Yeah, exactly that. And then we had some good years there as well. Like we got promoted twice. We had given where the club was, we had some good finishes in the league. And what I learned, a couple of things that I learned from those times playing rugby. One is that if you need the group of people, the majority of the people need to be radiators rather than sponges. If you have a group of people that are very selfish and they're taking it all for them, and ultimately the project will fail or the team will fail. It needs to be people who are more leaning towards more selfless actions and are energy givers to the team and want the best for the team. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, if things aren't going well, you need to create a culture where people feel comfortable making mistakes. People can't be nervous about making mistakes or constantly worrying about what the consequences are for their actions. That's just not healthy. So that's the second thing. You need to be kind of feel comfortable in your own skin to make your own decisions. And then the third thing is, and this is something that I've seen this happen a lot, is that when things aren't right, if you feel that things aren't going right, in a team, if the direction of the team's not going right, if people aren't pulling their weight, you need to speak up, because you're not helping anyone. You're not helping the leaders in the team. If you feel like it's going in the wrong direction, they might be completely oblivious to this, right? They might be too far away from it. They're just not seeing it. They're getting blindsided by it. So you have an onus and a responsibility to speak up. And I've seen it, you know, with a lot of the times, and with some of those teams that I played in, you know, a lot of the kind of senior players that were just saying, "Oh, I'm just not happy about this," but you're not saying it to the coach. And then say even like in a very manufactured environment, the apprentice, same thing happened the time I got fired. There was everyone was like, "This is great, this is awesome." I was like, "Great, this is awesome," and then we get to the border and everyone's like, "Oh, it's fucking shit."
Exactly.
That happens all the time there. But
and
I think what I do take, I've got a fantastic manager in FIS who definitely has nurtured that culture where people can express themselves, and he gives people, even the youngest recruits in the team or the newest recruits in the team, he gives people enough leeway to make those mistakes, because you'll never learn otherwise. But I'll always, if I feel like something's not right, I'll always tell him. And he's very open and welcome to that feedback, which is good.
Yeah.
The other kind of key ingredients, and I think ultimately you get in what you put out of every team, right? So if that's the same, back to the radiator and the sponge thing, if you're in there and you're just always looking to take, if one thing doesn't go your way, you just get fed up with it. Whereas if you invest and you buy into whatever you're doing, whatever the project is, whatever the job is, whatever the organization is, ultimately the team will benefit from that, and you'll be a lot happier in yourself.
Yeah. No, fantastic. As I said, we could do a separate podcast just on the rugby and apprentice alone, to be honest. But I love that. I think, for me, the key one there, which I've talked before, is about not being afraid to, make mistakes, and not having that sort of blame culture and stuff within the business. Obviously, talking about from a sport perspective as well, because again, it just inhibits people if you always worry you're not, I shouldn't do that, or I might not do that, whatever. I said it, you're not. You don't know what you could be doing. You're not performing, obviously, at your best, because you're kind of worried in the background all the time. Oh, what if this one? So I think it probably happens. That's probably a lot that happens in sport. To be honest, there's so much pressure on people, it's tough. It's a tough thing.
And there's a layer perspective to it as well, right? Because it's totally normal to come into a new job, or if you're starting off with a new team, to put a pressure on yourself to perform and to make good impression, right? And you're going to be nervous about making decisions, about your actions, how you present yourself in a meeting. Like, that's totally normal, right? And there'll be like a watershed moment where you're going, I feel like I've proved myself now. And, be it, if it's on the pitch, you have a good game, you might, if it's in a new job, that you get kudos from your boss, or you might close a deal. There's that moment where it's like, oh, the shackles are off now, where I can really be myself. But there's and that's healthy. Like, you don't want to be rolling up into a job and not really, I don't give a shit, like, making mistakes everywhere. That's not good practice. But yeah, there's an organization or a leader or a company needs to give you that leeway to make those mistakes early and allow you to earn your stripes. So then once you get it, once you get that confidence to take on more challenges, make more decisions, make more mistakes, and then ultimately that's how you get better, right? You get better from making mistakes. Like, I'm in a player coach role at the minute, and I've had a guy shadowing me on some deals for the last 6 months, and he's been great. He's very engaged. But then we get to, he's in a deal now. We're getting to the contracts, and we're talking about, it's like, do you remember when this happened 3 or 4 months ago? And it's like, I kind of do, but I get it, because it's like, you ultimately, until it's your decision and it's your responsibility to do it, you just won't get it. Like, you can shadow people all day long, until the buck stops with you, and it's that's when you learn.
No, 100%. Yeah, I've had a few of those light bulb moments. It suddenly hits you, like, I get it now.
Yeah. And it's like, I told you this 3 months ago. It's like, yeah, but it wasn't my problem then. Now it's my problem.
Yeah. No, I've definitely been in that situation a few times myself. But like I said, you do, as long as you pick up, you learn from it, and obviously that don't make a mistake next time. And yeah, that's all part of growing and getting nurtured. Just conscious of time. Just last question, just quickly. Just what you think of the kind of future holds for business when it comes to like creating partnerships. Obviously, we've got loads of new, kind of technologies out there. Obviously, the one I was kind of, sort of always gets touched on is obviously the AI. AI is the new buzzword at the moment. There's a lot is going to be, infiltrating lots of businesses in terms of how, companies might use it. I mean, that's just one example. But what do you think, with FIS, do you think that, from a future perspective, anything you'd be doing, differently in the way you work, in terms of creating partnerships? I think obviously I know you said obviously gone a bit more into sales, but maybe you can even do it from that perspective. Is anything, any new technology or anything, you can see different, might work differently in the future?
I'm going to say I'm a little bit old school in my way of thinking. So I think there was a big bet, right, that things would move towards the metaverse and people would become less inclined to go face to face. And I actually think the opposite is happening. And I really hope it does remain the way. Like, I think face to face engagement, handshakes, getting in front of people is the way now and is the way forward. And I really don't buy into this thing where we all just sit at home with masks over or with goggles in our head and we're doing business. Like, it's just not organic. It's not how we're set up to be. And I think I think we're starting to see now is that, like, organizations are kind of saying, I think that the future way of working is a hybrid model. I think in order to attract the best talent, you can't insist that they sit in one desk 5 days a week. I think very few places are like that anymore anyways. But it's a hybrid model. It's getting into the office, working in teams at least once or twice a week, giving people that flexibility to express themselves and work in an environment that makes them feel good and productive. But it's not with a set of goggles on and it's not being chained to the desk. It's that flexibility.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, no one's actually touched that before with the metaverse. Again, that's another obviously word I think most people don't really probably fully understand what it actually means. If anyone's seen Player Ready One, that's probably an extreme version of what the future will look like in the metaverse. People going to work virtually. But it's kind of those types of things, those sort of things do exist. There's games and stuff where people just literally their job is they're doing a role in the in the game to support stuff and making money and getting paid from stuff. So it sounds crazy, but it's already here.
I had a friend had a meeting with Meta recently, and I think ahead of the meeting, I'm sure the exact technicality, I think ahead of the meeting they like posted out like headsets for them, and they'd done a whole metaverse experience with them for this big kind of meeting partner. It was a partnership meeting as well, and she was like, it was really cool, but I just can't see it sticking, although they've invested a lot of money in this, right? So they've even changed their names. So I guess they have to make it work.
Yeah, they're gonna have to do something. I mean, obviously Meta, they've got quite a bit of money to play with. So
wouldn't be a bad thing to see Mark Zuckerberg get something wrong.
Oh, trust me, I'm sure he's got a few things wrong. We just don't get to hear about it as much. I think metaverse, that's a whole whole world. But I love that just because I think again for me it's the same thing. Even just like you said with the hybrid role and working, I think that is a good balance in terms of you have 1 or 2 days in the office and then obviously working from as well. But being in front of a screen is it's great. Obviously there's tons obviously lots of pros to it, but you just can't beat an old-fashioned sitting with someone having a chat and just how you bounce off each other in real life compared to virtually or on a screen. It's just you just can't. It's not the same. I just don't think that can ever really replace.
No, it's actually in a weird way it's more efficient, right? Because you build that relationship or that connection far faster face to face. probably take 5-10 virtual calls to get to a level of connection that you would by spending an hour in front of them face to face.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
So so it's not efficient because I've got to travel there, and it's like, but if your job is to build connections with people in partnerships and in sales, it's actually more efficient to get in front of them, because they'll trust you. They'll be quicker to make decisions with you if they get in front of you and they get a good feel. So it's more efficient in that sense.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, so I think just the key things, like I said, having that, building that rapport, having a vibe with someone over a screen, it's just not the same as physically just being sat. Next time, like you said, it's the actual physical handshake and those sort of things. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how the future goes, like whether this whether the meta thing will take off and the AI stuff. But listen, just come to the end. Just really appreciate come and talk to us. I said I'd love it. As I said, I think we could have a separate podcast alone on other things. Who knows? Maybe we can try and get it back at some point. But really appreciate you coming and talking to us. And like I said, just good luck with everything at FIS.
Pleasure, and hope all is well. Good luck with everything at Finder too.
Yeah.
Cheers, Carl. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need to knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships. Mm-hmm.